Married for 3 years, pregnant wife finally meets millionaire husband in bed trap set by Mistress. They say every fairy tale has a magic moment, but for Evelyn Whittaker, magic was in short supply. Married for 3 years to a man she barely knew, the young woman often felt she had stepped into a story that was never truly hers. With her husband, Alexander Knight, mysteriously absent, she lived in a mansion full of secrets. Yet the night she finally discovered him in their own bed, things were far from the romantic reunion she had once dreamed. Instead, she stumbled on a scene orchestrated by an unexpected enemy, his mistress. And in that single moment, Evelyn's world tore open, setting off a battle for her dignity, her marriage, and her future. Evelyn Whittaker Knight had always been drawn to the quiet corners of Knight Mansion. It wasn't because she enjoyed solitude, but because the corridors hummed with stories no one else seemed to hear. Positioned on a lush estate in the outskirts of Los Angeles, the Knight family home boasted a grandeur she'd never encountered in her humble upbringing. Now, after 3 years of marriage to Alexander Knight, she could traverse its vast halls blindfolded. Yet the house still felt stranger than a borrowed coat. Despite living under the same roof or so, it seemed Alexander was practically a ghost. To the outside world, they were a glamorous couple. She, the soft-spoken Cinderella from nowhere, and he, the charismatic millionaire with a family legacy. But behind closed doors, she rarely saw him. Business trips, late-night meetings, or hush-hush responsibilities to the Knight Empire always seemed to spirit him away. Those absences came with a deafening silence in her heart. Evelyn was not naive, though she'd been called that many times. She had noticed the staff exchanging cryptic glances whenever she ventured too close to her husband's study or lingered in the West Wing, a section of the mansion Alexander had practically claimed as his own. It was rumored to house more than just his private offices. Some said he stored priceless art. Others whispered about top-secret business deals. The truth, however, was that no one really knew what was inside. Late one night, as she tiptoed around the second-floor corridor, her mind was rife with memories of their wedding day. She had been just 21, newly introduced to Alexander by his philanthropic father, Mr. Benjamin Knight, during a charitable fundraiser in Beverly Hills. Alexander had dazzled her with a whirlwind of attention, fiery kisses, and a promise that she would never want for anything again. She wondered now if it had all been a carefully orchestrated lie. Their wedding was a lavish affair hosted at the famous Knight estate in Napa Valley, with name-dropping guests like the actress Selena Wright and tech mogul Jason Fuller. Everything about that day screamed fantasy, but in the days that followed, the sweet illusions began to crumble. Despite the caretaker's urging and the staff's forced politeness, she felt her presence was more tolerated than welcomed. Evelyn tried to excuse it. Perhaps they were just protective of their aloof young master. Maybe Alexander's abrupt change in demeanor, turning from affectionate to absent, was linked to the pressure of running Knight Enterprises, a corporation with fingers in real estate, tech startups, and philanthropic foundations. But the hush-hush nature of it all wore on her. In the darkness of the corridor, Evelyn leaned her forehead against the cool wooden paneling, pressing her palm to a hidden swirl in the mahogany. She could hear the faintest echo of footsteps on the floors below. Was it another late-night visitor, or was it the staff, once again scurrying with secrets they would never share? Little did she know, the biggest secret of all awaited her not too far away, proof that fairy tales do exist, but sometimes they come twisted with heartbreak and betrayal. Evelyn, darling, you look pale. Are you sure you're feeling all right? Linda Donahue, the mansion's head housekeeper, approached her with maternal concern the next morning. Linda had been with the Knight family for 20 years, and though she never betrayed confidences, she often exuded the warmth, Evelyn desperately sought. Evelyn forced a smile. "I'm fine, just a little tired," she offered. Linda nodded sympathetically, but the slight furrow in her brow told Evelyn she didn't believe it. Without pressing further, Linda handed her a neatly folded letter. "This came for you." The courier said it was urgent. Heart thumping, Evelyn glanced at the envelope. There was no return address, just her name, typed in block letters, Evelyn Whittaker Knight. A sense of foreboding pricked at her as she retreated to the privacy of her drawing room. The letter was concise and cryptic. "Meet me at the Beverly Grand Hotel penthouse tomorrow at 8 p.m. Your husband will be there. Trust me, you'll want to see this." No signature, no explanation. Just a demand and a hotel name that conjured images of Hollywood celebrities and red carpet galas. Why would Alexander be at the Beverly Grand? Hadn't he told her he was going on a business trip to San Francisco? And who had sent this? Her mind swarmed with confusion and dread. Evelyn tried calling Alexander's assistant, Gloria Kim, one of the few people who might give her a direct answer. "But," Gloria said, Alexander's schedule had him flying to New York for a real estate investment conference, not San Francisco. Suspicion gnawed at Evelyn's heart. She could almost hear the echo of her own mother's voice from years ago, cautioning her, "Wealthy families have secrets. Be careful, child." Her mother, June Whittaker, had passed away 6 months before she met Alexander. Evelyn had felt unmoored then, clinging to the promise of a better future that Alexander offered. Now she questioned her own judgment, but part of her also bristled with anger. If he was lying to her, was she expected to just stand by quietly? Determined not to let fear paralyze her, she decided to go to the Beverly Grand. She would uncover the truth with her own eyes. She rummaged through her closet for something plain, not wanting to draw attention, but everything she owned was either too casual or too formal. Finally, she settled on a simple black dress and a light jacket. If she had to confront Alexander in a public space, at least she'd look composed doing it. Before heading out the next evening, she found Linda in the staff kitchen. "Linda," Evelyn said, attempting a confident tone, "I'll be out for a while. Cover for me if anyone asks." Linda's eyes flickered with concern, but she simply nodded. "Please be careful, Mrs. Knight." Evelyn swallowed hard, taking in the motherly worry in Linda's voice. Though her last name might be Knight, she felt more like an interloper than ever. With the mysterious letter tucked safely in her purse, she stepped out of the mansion's heavy front doors. Tonight, she'd enter a world of answers, or face more questions that might break her heart. The Beverly Grand Hotel was a skyscraper of glittering windows and monolithic prestige. Evelyn's taxi pulled into a driveway lined with red roses and tall palm trees, reminiscent of the classic Hollywood era. She thanked the driver and slipped out into the balmy Los Angeles evening, heart pounding as she approached the main entrance. Paparazzi was stationed by the front doors. Apparently some pop star was holding a private party upstairs. Evelyn kept her head down, rushing past the cameras. She made her way through the marble-floored lobby, scanning for any sign of Alexander. The letter had said to meet at the penthouse, but her phone showed no messages from him. A wave of insecurity hit her. What if this was a hoax? Pressing on, she took a private elevator to the penthouse suite, accessible only by a keycard. A neatly dressed concierge hovered by the elevator. Upon spotting the typed note in Evelyn's hand, the concierge said softly, "Are you Miss S. Knight? They're expecting you inside." As soon as the penthouse doors slid open, her gaze swept the plush interior. Modern chandeliers cast a golden glow on the open-plan living room. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic view of the Los Angeles skyline. But the space felt eerily empty. There were no signs of a party, nor any sign of Alexander. "Hello?" she called out, her voice echoing. A figure emerged from behind a partial divider. The woman wore a scarlet dress that hugged her curves, and her long, dark hair tumbled over her shoulders. She had striking features, all sharp angles and deliberate elegance. Evelyn recognized her. Vanessa Monroe. She was rumored to be one of Alexander's business associates, or so Alexander had casually mentioned once at a social gathering. But what was she doing here? Evelyn, Vanessa purred, stepping closer. I'm surprised you actually came. Evelyn's pulse hammered. What is this about? Where is Alexander? Vanessa smirked, crossing her arms. He'll be here soon enough, or maybe not. I suppose it depends on whether you can handle the truth I'm about to show you. Fear and anger knotted together in Evelyn's stomach. She wanted to demand answers. But something about Vanessa's triumphant gaze made her hesitate. Did Vanessa intend to ruin Evelyn's marriage? Or was she feeding off the suspense? Evelyn's eyes flickered to a door at the far end of the suite. Was Alexander behind that door? Listen, Evelyn managed, trying to steady her voice. If you have something to show me, just do it. Vanessa's dark red lips curled into a mocking smile. I thought you'd never ask. Then, with an almost theatrical gesture, she waved toward the bedroom. After you. The sense of impending doom grew more pronounced as Evelyn walked ahead. Her heels clicked on the marble floors. She paused in front of the bedroom door, hand trembling on the handle. Could she truly face whatever was on the other side? Vanessa leaned against the wall, arms folded, and spoke one last time, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Fairy tales don't always have happy endings, darling. Are you ready for yours to end? With one resolute breath, Evelyn pushed the door open. Inside the penthouse bedroom, the lights were dim. Instantly, Evelyn's eyes were drawn to the massive king-size bed at the center of the room, and there, beneath silken sheets, was a figure, her heart lodged in her throat. Slowly, she advanced, aware that Vanessa was watching her every move from the threshold. At first, she could hardly process what she was seeing. Alexander, her husband, lay sprawled on the bed, shirt unbuttoned, hair disheveled. He looked like he'd indulged in too many drinks or perhaps something stronger. Her stomach twisted at the sight. This was the man she had prayed would finally come home to her. Yet here he was, seemingly half naked in a penthouse suite. He'd never mentioned. Evelyn darted her gaze around the room. No one else was present, but the evidence of a night's debauchery littered the space. An empty wine bottle, scattered clothes on the floor, an overpowering scent of perfume that was definitely not hers. Her lips parted in a silent gasp. She felt as though she were watching a scene from someone else's life, but her trembling hands reminded her it was all too real. So you see, Vanessa said in a stage whisper, stepping closer, your husband has been living a double life, and you thought he was too busy to come home at night. She tossed her hair back, eyes gleaming with triumph. Actually, he's been spending his nights here with me. Alexander? Evelyn whispered, voice wavering. She approached the bed, wanting to shake him awake, to demand an explanation. Alexander, wake up! He stirred slightly, groaning, but didn't fully regain consciousness. The pungent smell of alcohol hung around him. The heartbreak welling in Evelyn's chest was so acute she felt physically ill. Everything in her wanted to flee, but at the same time, she needed answers. Vanessa's laughter sliced through the tension. Oh, he won't be awake for a while. The sleeping pills made sure of that. She circled around the bed until she stood directly across from Evelyn. He was more than willing to come out tonight, but let's just say I helped him relax a little extra. Evelyn was stunned. You drugged him? She managed. Suddenly, it was as if the entire scenario took on a new, terrifying dimension. Was Alexander a willing participant, or just a pawn in Vanessa's sick game? Vanessa shrugged, her gaze bright with arrogance. He's not entirely innocent. We've been seeing each other for a while, dear. But tonight, I wanted to send a very clear message. He's mine. You need to step aside. Rage and betrayal warred within Evelyn. She thought of how lonely the past 3 years had been, how often she'd tried to convince herself Alexander was merely busy, not unfaithful. Tears stung her eyes. "You can't just steal my husband," she said quietly, mustering the last shred of composure. "We're married, whether you like it or not." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Let's not pretend your marriage was a love match. Everyone in Los Angeles knows this was an arranged convenience. You're Cinderella, in name only, and now your glass slipper is about to shatter." Evelyn's throat tightened. The heartbreak was raw, but beneath it, anger rose like a storm. "I won't let you do this." Vanessa lifted her chin defiantly. "Try if you must," she purred, "but everything you see here is real, and I have the photos, the text messages, and the proof to ruin both your reputations. Believe me, the media will have a field day if I decide to share it." For a moment, time seemed suspended. This was no ordinary lover's quarrel. Vanessa had set a trap, one that could destroy the Knight family name, ruin Evelyn's marriage, and shatter any remaining sense of normalcy in her life. Evelyn looked at Alexander's lifeless form once more, and then back at the woman who seemed hell-bent on taking her place. Evelyn might have been naive once, but in that instant, she knew she had to stand and fight or lose everything. Evelyn's first instinct was to call security, the police, anyone. But one look at Vanessa's smug expression told her the entire scenario was orchestrated to discredit Evelyn. If she made a scene now, who would believe the wife in a supposed loveless marriage over the cunning mistress who had photographic evidence? Swallowing her pride, Evelyn turned away from Vanessa. "I'm taking him home," she declared, voice trembling but resolute. "Whatever your plan is, it stops here." Vanessa's smirk wavered slightly. "Are you? And how do you think you'll get him out without causing a scandal?" She gestured at Alexander's inert body. Evelyn refused to answer. Instead, she leaned down, trying to rouse him. Alexander mumbled incoherently, eyebrows scrunching in confusion. He was in no condition to walk on his own, let alone answer her questions. As tears threatened to spill, Evelyn stiffened her back. This was no time to break down. Suddenly, a new voice startled them both. "Need a hand?" Evelyn whirled around to see a man standing at the open door. She recognized him at once, Maxwell Pierce, an old friend of Alexander's from his college days at Stanford. Maxwell was also a strategic advisor at Knight Enterprises, rumored to handle sensitive issues for the family. He strode into the room with an air of calm authority, glancing at the scene Alexander, half unconscious, Vanessa in a scarlet dress, and Evelyn fraught with heartbreak. Vanessa's expression twisted in annoyance. "Maxwell, how did you?" He cut her off with a dismissive wave. "I followed you. I suspected you'd pull a stunt like this." Then he turned to Evelyn, his voice gentler. "Evelyn, let me help. We need to get him out of here before word gets out." For a moment, Evelyn hesitated. She wasn't sure whom to trust. But Maxwell stepped forward, carefully lifting Alexander's arm over his shoulder. "I've booked a separate elevator. No cameras," he murmured. Vanessa, seeing her carefully laid plan crumble, hissed in frustration. "Maxwell, you can't keep covering for him forever. This will come out eventually." Maxwell ignored her, guiding Alexander toward the exit. With shaking hands, Evelyn gathered Alexander's jacket and phone, following behind. Before stepping out, she glanced over her shoulder at Vanessa. The mistress stood with arms crossed, her beautiful features contorted by rage. "This isn't over," Vanessa spat. Evelyn's heart pounded. She knew this was just the beginning of a very public, very devastating confrontation. But the immediate crisis was to get Alexander home. With Maxwell's help, they slipped Alexander into a private elevator that took them to an underground garage. A discreet black SUV waited by a side entrance, where a driver opened the door without comment. Evelyn slid into the back seat next to Alexander, who lolled against her, half awake. Maxwell took the front passenger seat. As the SUV pulled away from the Beverly Grand, Evelyn felt a swell of conflicting emotions. Relief that they'd escaped Vanessa's clutches for now and terror at the implications of what had just happened. The hush inside the vehicle was broken only by Alexander's ragged breathing and the steady hum of the engine. Tomorrow, everything would change. But for tonight, all she could do was hold on to her husband and pray she could find the strength to face the battles ahead. By the time they reached Night Mansion, the staff had retired for the night, save for Linda, who anxiously waited by the door. A flurry of alarm flashed in her eyes when she saw Maxwell carrying Alexander inside. "Oh my goodness, is he all right?" Evelyn tried to stay strong. He's just not feeling well. "Had too much to drink," she managed. Linda stepped forward to assist, while Maxwell cast a knowing look in Evelyn's direction, as if silently acknowledging the half-truth of her statement. They maneuvered Alexander to his bedroom in the West Wing, the place Evelyn seldom entered. But now she found herself helping Maxwell lay Alexander down on the king-size bed. The room was impeccably designed, from sleek custom furniture to a panoramic view of the estate gardens. It struck Evelyn how little she knew of this space, or of Alexander's life, beyond the glimpses she was allowed. Once Alexander was settled, Maxwell guided Evelyn into an adjacent study, closing the door behind them. He spoke quietly, as if they were surrounded by invisible ears. "Evelyn, you deserve to know that this situation with Vanessa has been brewing for a while." She bristled, tears threatening again. "I suspected something was wrong with our marriage, but not this. Why didn't anyone tell me?" Maxwell's gaze softened. "I can't speak for Alexander, but I imagine he was trying to protect you, or maybe protect himself from your reaction." "Vanessa, she's dangerous, Evelyn. She's not just his affair. She's cunning, manipulative. She's rumored to have sabotaged other wealthy families for her own gain." Evelyn slumped into a leather armchair, the weight of betrayal pressing on her. She looked at Maxwell, searching for honesty in his eyes. "Are you telling me he's in love with her?" Maxwell hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "From what I've seen, it's not love. It's more like a toxic entanglement. Vanessa thrives on control and leverage. She's had a hold on him for months, possibly longer." He exhaled. "I suspect she orchestrated tonight's fiasco to corner you into a scandal. Maybe she hoped you'd be humiliated enough to walk away quietly." Evelyn pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. "He never told me anything. We barely spoke. We rarely saw each other. I thought it was just work, but it wasn't," Maxwell finished gently. "Look, I know you and Alexander had an unusual start. From the outside, your marriage seemed more like a business arrangement. His father's philanthropic foundation offered you a scholarship for college, and soon after, you two were engaged. Rumors spread. Some said he needed a wife for social appearances. Others said it was a genuine whirlwind romance. Only you and Alexander know the truth." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "But now you have the chance to decide where you go from here." Tears finally escaped the corners of Evelyn's eyes. She was angry, humiliated, and exhausted, yet a thread of determination held her together. "I need to talk to him when he's sober." Maxwell nodded. "That's wise. If you need me, I'm here. But know this, Vanessa won't back down easily. She's already threatened to leak incriminating evidence that could damage both you and Knight Enterprises. You must prepare yourself." With that ominous warning, Maxwell left her alone in the study. Evelyn stared at the closed door, emotions swirling. She was no longer the naive Cinderella who believed love could conquer all. This was reality, and if she wanted to survive, she'd have to fight with every shred of strength she possessed. The next morning, sunlight crept through the curtains of the West Wing, gilding the luxurious furnishings with a deceptive warmth. Evelyn, who had barely slept, found herself seated at Alexander's bedside. He stirred awake slowly, letting out a soft groan. Bloodshot eyes blinked up at her. "Evie?" he rasped, voice hoarse. It was the nickname he used to call her in the early days of their marriage, the name that used to light a spark in her heart. She said nothing at first, watching him process his surroundings. A flicker of confusion crossed his face as he realized he was back at the mansion and not in the Beverly Grand penthouse. Then came the shame. He tried to sit up, head pounding with a hangover or something worse. "What happened? You tell me," Evelyn said, keeping her voice surprisingly calm, though tears threatened to resurface. "All I know is I found you in a hotel bed. Vanessa was there, gloating about how she drugged you." Alexander's face fell. He dragged a hand through his tousled hair. "I was with Vanessa, yes, but I swear, I didn't know she'd do something like that." Evelyn's heart clenched. "How long, Alexander? How long have you two been together?" He shut his eyes, unable to meet her gaze. After a moment, he answered quietly. "Months, maybe a year." Hearing it confirmed felt like a punch to the gut. Evelyn pressed her fingers against her eyelids, fighting back the onslaught of tears. "Why? All this time, I thought you were just busy with work, or we were just drifting apart. I never imagined." "I'm sorry," he whispered, sitting up fully. He reached out for her hand, but she pulled away. "It was a mistake. I was lonely in our marriage." She held up a hand, stopping him. "Don't you dare put this on me. I tried so hard to make things work. I tried to be the wife you needed, but you shut me out. You can't blame loneliness for betrayal." He looked genuinely remorseful. "I know. You're right. I'm not making excuses, just explaining how I got tangled up," Vanessa offered. "Excitement, I guess. And she had business connections, but it spiraled out of control. I never wanted to hurt you." Evelyn could hardly stand to look at him. The betrayal, the half-truths, the secrets, it was all too much. "You made me look like a fool in front of the world, Alexander. And now Vanessa is threatening us. You realize that, right?" He nodded, wincing as if the admission physically pained him. "Yes. I heard from Maxwell before you came in. He said Vanessa has evidence, pictures, messages. She's threatening to take it all to the tabloids if we don't pay her off, or if you don't let me file for a divorce." At that, a stunned silence filled the room. So that was Vanessa's endgame: push Evelyn out, claim Alexander for herself, and possibly extort money along the way. Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I'm not letting her blackmail us. And I'm not stepping aside just because you got restless. If you want a divorce, say it to my face. Don't hide behind her threats." Alexander's eyes flickered with regret. "I don't want that. I made a mistake, Evelyn, a huge mistake. But I want to fix this if you'll let me." His voice cracked with sincerity. "I never stopped caring about you. Please." Evelyn swallowed, tears finally trailing down her cheeks. She didn't respond immediately. The ache in her chest was overwhelming. Part of her wanted to run, to leave him and this mansion forever. Yet another part of her yearned for the man she fell in love with, if that man had ever truly existed. "I don't know, Alexander," she whispered. "I honestly don't know." News of Alexander's illness spread through the mansion staff by midday, with Linda fussing over him and Maxwell stopping by to debrief. In hushed voices, Evelyn and Maxwell relayed the basics to Linda, who nodded gravely. "I've never trusted that Vanessa," Linda muttered. She'd appear at the oddest times, always wearing that predatory smile. Evelyn forced a faint smile of gratitude. At least she wasn't alone in sensing Vanessa's duplicity. Meanwhile, Alexander remained in his study, making phone calls likely to his father, Mr. Benjamin Knight, and a handful of attorneys. He was determined to contain the fallout before Vanessa made her next move. Late that afternoon, Maxwell pulled Evelyn aside. "I have an idea," he said, voice calm but resolute. "We need to wrestle control of this narrative away from Vanessa. If she's planning to go public, we need to get ahead of her. Evelyn folded her arms. How exactly? Alexander admitted to the affair. There are probably pictures. Maxwell nodded. Yes, but if we release a statement first, something that addresses the rumors without confirming them, Vanessa's claims might seem like the ramblings of a jealous ex. We can frame her as an unstable woman seeking to exploit the Knight family for money. Evelyn's stomach churned at the thought of lying to the public. Yet the alternative was letting Vanessa unleash a scandal that would tear her marriage apart and tarnish the Knight name. I hate this, she confessed. It feels wrong to spin the truth. But I also can't let her blackmail us. Maxwell softened. You don't deserve this. But sometimes with families like the Knights, the only way to survive is to control the story. He hesitated, then added, Alexander might also consider stepping down from some of his public roles temporarily. A lower profile would help quell media interest. Later that evening, the three of them, Evelyn, Alexander, and Maxwell, sat around a polished conference table in the mansion's boardroom, discussing strategy. Alexander was visibly remorseful, though he kept his emotions in check. If we go this route, he said, we'll have to discredit Vanessa publicly. She could retaliate with actual evidence. Maxwell tapped a folder on the table. My sources indicate she hasn't sold anything yet. She's waiting for the highest bidder or the biggest payoff. If we strike first, maybe we can dismantle her credibility. He turned to Evelyn. But it requires your cooperation. If you're going to stand by Alexander for now, you'll have to present a united front. Are you ready for that? Evelyn looked at her husband, searching his face for sincerity. He gazed back with silent regret, as though pleading for forgiveness. Anger still burned within her, but so did a desire to preserve what was left of her life, her home, her dignity. I'll do what I must, she said quietly. But after this crisis is over, Alexander and I need to figure out what our marriage really means. Alexander swallowed, nodding. I understand. I promise I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. Maxwell offered a small, reassuring smile. All right, let's prepare for battle. I'll have our legal team draft a preemptive statement. In the meantime, keep your phones on. We don't know when Vanessa will make her next move. With that, an uneasy alliance was formed. They would stand together to protect the Knight legacy and Evelyn's rightful place in it. But beneath the surface, unspoken tensions simmered. Even if they outmaneuvered Vanessa, could Alexander and Evelyn salvage a love story that may never have truly begun? Early the next morning, a low buzz rippled through the mansion as staff and security rushed about. Something was amiss. Evelyn, awakened by the commotion, quickly threw on a robe and stepped into the corridor, where she nearly collided with Linda. Miss S. Knight, Linda gasped. There's a scandalous article circulating online pictures of Mr. Alexander with Miss Vanessa Monroe at the Beverly Grand. I overheard the security team saying reporters are already outside the gates. The breath caught in Evelyn's throat, so Vanessa had moved faster than they anticipated. Heart hammering, she darted toward the study, where she found Maxwell hunched over a computer, reading a gossip website's newly released expose. Several photos depicted Alexander and Vanessa in suggestive poses, including one shot that showed them embracing in the penthouse hallway. Another photograph teased that Evelyn was the clueless wife, a Cinderella who married her prince but failed to keep him. Maxwell glanced up as she entered, face grim. It's not as bad as it could be, he said softly. There's no outright nudity, but it confirms the affair. And it paints you as the naive trophy wife. Evelyn swallowed hard, scanning the article. Her eyes landed on a particularly cruel sentence. Evelyn Whittaker Knight might have captured Alexander Knight's ring, but she never captured his heart. Sources say Vanessa Monroe is the real power behind the man, and he's more than willing to give up his loveless marriage. Alexander stormed in moments later, phone clutched in his hand. "It's gone viral," he muttered, running a shaky hand through his hair. "Vanessa just texted me. She wants to meet again. Apparently, she's threatening to sell more explicit material if we don't comply with her demands." Evelyn felt a swell of anger, so intense she had to close her eyes for a moment. "This is extortion," she stated. "We should call the police." Maxwell frowned. "We can." But Vanessa might have carefully skirted the line of legality. Proving extortion could be tricky if she frames it as a business negotiation or if there's no written blackmail attempt. Alexander groaned, dropping into a chair. "She's cunning, and with everything out in the open now, the Board of Knight Enterprises is going to demand an explanation." He glanced at Evelyn, guilt etched across his features. Evelyn hugged herself. The article's humiliating portrayal felt like a punch to the gut. Still, she refused to crumble. "Let's issue that statement you drafted, Maxwell," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "Deny the affair, or at least question the authenticity of the photos." Alexander sighed heavily. "But they're real, and Vanessa probably has more damning evidence. If we deny, we look like liars when the next wave hits." Maxwell set his jaw. "Then maybe it's time we show our hand, acknowledge the photos, but paint Vanessa as an opportunistic manipulator. Say that Alexander was drugged or coerced. We can claim she exploited him for personal gain, and that your marriage is a private matter you intend to resolve away from the public eye." Evelyn's stomach churned. It was a half-truth at best. But the alternative, full public humiliation, was worse. "Fine," she agreed, exhaling shakily. "Let's do it. But I want to meet Vanessa myself, face to face, without any more ambushes." Alexander stiffened, worry glinting in his eyes. "Evelyn, that might be dangerous. She's unpredictable." Evelyn's voice hardened. "I don't care. She attacked my marriage, my character. I deserve a chance to stand up for myself. If we're going to end this, I want to look her in the eye and make it clear." "I'm not backing down." Maxwell nodded, though uncertainty clouded his gaze. "Let's arrange it carefully then. Maybe a public place with security. We can't afford to let her trap you again." As they prepared for the next confrontation, Evelyn steeled herself. This was her life. Her husband, however flawed, and her reputation. She might not have chosen this fight, but she would finish it, no matter the cost. 2 days later, the rendezvous was set at an exclusive private club in Beverly Hills, known simply as the Astor. It was a place frequented by Hollywood elites and high-profile business magnates somewhere. Vanessa couldn't easily pull the same stunt she'd orchestrated at the Beverly Grand. Maxwell made sure the meeting room was discreet, secure, and overlooked by Knight family security personnel stationed nearby. Evelyn arrived first, accompanied by Maxwell. Alexander insisted on coming, but Evelyn requested he wait outside. She wanted this confrontation to be between her and Vanessa. A single overhead light illuminated the polished mahogany table, giving the room a subdued, tense atmosphere. Maxwell stood watch by the door, his presence both reassuring and a warning to Vanessa not to try anything underhanded. Minutes ticked by. Then the door swung open and Vanessa sauntered in, wearing a tailored black blazer and killer heels. She cast an appraising glance around the room before settling her gaze on Evelyn. "Well, well," Vanessa drawled, seating herself across the table. "Cinderella wants to fight for her prince. How romantic." Evelyn steadied her nerves, ignoring the taunt. "This has gone far enough, Vanessa. You've leaked photos, spread lies. What do you want?" Vanessa's red lips curled into a slow smile. "What do I want? Let's see. I want compensation for my time with Alexander. I want public recognition of our relationship. And I want you out of the picture." She paused, tapping a manicured nail against the table. In short, I want him to divorce you. Immediately, Maxwell's jaw tightened. He was about to speak, but Evelyn lifted a hand, stopping him. And if we don't give you what you want, Vanessa shrugged. Then I have plenty more photos and videos, including some quite explicit ones. I also have messages where Alexander complains about your marriage. Imagine the headlines: Knight heirs true feelings for his trophy wife exposed. Plus, the board of Knight Enterprises will be none too pleased about the scandal. Investors could bail. Your precious empire could crumble, all because you won't concede the inevitable. Evelyn's heart twisted, but she refused to show weakness. You can spin whatever story you want, but we've also gone to the press. We have statements from staff at the Beverly Grand who saw you slip something into Alexander's drink. We can prove you drugged him that night. Your credibility is already shaky. Vanessa's eyes flashed with anger. You think that will scare me off? You have no proof I drugged him. And no one at that hotel will talk money can buy silence, sweetheart. Just ask your dear father-in-law. Evelyn clenched her fists, recalling how money often smoothed over family scandals. But she wasn't backing down. We're prepared to fight. Legally, publicly, whatever it takes. And if you persist, we'll drag you to court for defamation and blackmail. A tense silence hovered. Finally, Vanessa leaned forward, her voice dangerously low. Listen carefully, Cinderella. Alexander and I were together for a reason. He craved something you couldn't give him. That's not going away. If you win this battle, you still lose, because your marriage will be a lie. You'll be playing house with a man who's already strayed. For a split second, pain lanced through Evelyn's resolve. But she'd anticipated this personal attack. Taking a shaky breath, she responded, My relationship with Alexander is my concern. If he wants out, he'll say so. But if he wants to repair our marriage, I'll decide on my terms, not yours. Vanessa's lips twisted into a mocking smirk. Such bravery. We'll see how long it lasts. Before she could continue, Maxwell stepped forward. This meeting is over. Miss Monroe, you've stated your demands, and we'll respond through our lawyers. Good night. Vanessa stood, smoothing her blazer. We'll see whose lawyers win, or perhaps I'll just leak something even more scandalous tomorrow. Keep an eye on the tabloids. She brushed past Maxwell, leaving the room in a swirl of expensive perfume. The moment the door slammed shut, Evelyn's bravado faltered. She exhaled shakily, sinking into a chair. Maxwell placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You did well, he said gently. But this is far from finished. Evelyn nodded, her chest tight. She'd stood face to face with the woman who had tried to annihilate her marriage and come out resolute. Yet Vanessa's parting words haunted her. Even if they won the public battle, what of the private war raging in Evelyn's heart? Could she truly forgive Alexander? Or was she fighting for a love that might never have been real? Late that night, Evelyn wandered the manicured gardens behind Knight Mansion. The moonlit pathways and neatly trimmed hedges offered a serene backdrop to her chaotic thoughts. She needed clarity. She needed to decide if she was truly willing to stand by Alexander after everything that had happened. The soft crunch of gravel behind her caught her attention. She turned to see Alexander approaching, hands shoved in his pockets. He looked vulnerable under the pale moonlight, his usually confident stance tempered by remorse. Maxwell told me about the meeting, he said quietly. Evelyn nodded, folding her arms over her chest. Yes. Vanessa wants you to divorce me and pay her off. She's threatening more leaks. He nodded grimly, stopping a few feet away. I figured. She texted me, claiming she has videos. I don't know if they exist or if she's bluffing, but either way, it's ugly. They stood in awkward silence, the hush of the gardens accentuating the tension. Finally, Evelyn spoke, voice raw. Alexander, I have to know something. Were we ever real? Our engagement happened so fast, right after your father introduced us at that fundraiser. You seemed enchanted by me, and I was so naive, I guess. But was any of it true for you? He swallowed, stepping closer. When we first met, I was intrigued. You were kind, genuine, so unlike the superficial circles I ran in. I'll admit, my father pushed me toward marriage, citing PR benefits and philanthropic synergy. But there was also a spark, Evelyn. I was drawn to your authenticity. A tear slipped down her cheek. Then what happened? Alexander's shoulders slumped. Life happened. My father pressured me to take on more responsibilities at Knight Enterprises. Vanessa started as a business contact, offering to connect me with big investors. I was stressed, lonely. One thing led to another. It was a mistake, a betrayal. I know that. But it wasn't because I didn't care about you. Evelyn let out a shaky breath. Hearing him say he cared still left a bitter ache. Do you want a divorce? Are you in love with Vanessa? He shook his head vehemently. No, I never wanted a divorce, and I'm not in love with her. I'm ashamed of everything I've done, but I want to try to make things right if you'll give me the chance. She dropped her gaze to the ground, her heart feeling weighed down by sorrow and the remnants of hope. I don't know if I can trust you again, she whispered. I can't just forget what you did. Alexander reached for her hand but stopped short, as if afraid of her rejection. I understand. All I can say is that I'm going to prove to you and to the world that I choose you. I'll cut ties with Vanessa, do whatever our lawyers recommend. I'll step down from public roles if necessary. I'll put in the work to show you I'm serious about our marriage. Evelyn lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes. Words aren't enough, she said softly. But I'll watch your actions. If you truly mean this, then fight for me. Fight for us. He nodded, tears glistening. I will. I promise. They stood there under the moonlight, bound by a fragile truce. Tomorrow they would continue the battle against Vanessa, the tabloids, and possibly the entire gossip-hungry world. But for now, a seed of hope sprouted between them, tentative and delicate, yet unwilling to give up just yet. Over the next few weeks, the battle raged on in the tabloids, on social media, and behind closed doors. Vanessa launched wave after wave of sensational stories, casting doubt on Evelyn's credibility and painting Alexander as a clueless puppet. Yet Maxwell and the Knight's legal team countered with strategic releases of their own, discrediting Vanessa's character by highlighting her history of manipulating affluent men for personal gain. It was a relentless tug-of-war for public sympathy and power. During that turbulent time, Evelyn discovered a wellspring of resilience within herself. Rather than hiding in the shadows, she began making public appearances, attending charity galas, philanthropic events, and even an impromptu press conference with Alexander by her side. Though the paparazzi shouted invasive questions, she faced the cameras with quiet poise. She refused to let Vanessa define her. Gradually, the tide began to turn. Bloggers who once mocked Evelyn as the clueless Cinderella now praised her grace under fire. Articles emerged, recounting Evelyn's background, how she'd grown up in a modest home, lost her mother young, and still pursued higher education with the support of a scholarship. They noted her charitable involvement in local communities, and the sincerity that drew people to her cause. Alexander, for his part, made changes that spoke louder than words. He transferred Vanessa's business contracts to other executives, severing personal ties. He invited Evelyn to board meetings and asked for her input on philanthropic decisions, displaying a genuine willingness to bridge the gap in their marriage. Whether out of guilt, genuine love, or both, he worked tirelessly to earn back her trust. One morning, Evelyn received a private message from a woman named Felicia, who claimed to be another of Vanessa's victims, a wealthy widow from New York who had lost a fortune through Vanessa's manipulative schemes. Felicia shared documents and affidavits that further exposed Vanessa's pattern of blackmail and extortion. Armed with this new evidence, Maxwell and the Knight legal team filed a lawsuit against Vanessa. With potential prison time looming, Vanessa found her advantage rapidly disintegrating. The final blow came when a renowned journalist from the Los Angeles Post, Anna Dupree, interviewed Evelyn. Far from a scandal-hungry gossip piece, it was a compassionate, in-depth article exploring Evelyn's journey from ordinary girl to reluctant heiress to a woman claiming her voice. The story painted Vanessa as a cunning antagonist and revealed Evelyn's efforts to restore her marriage not out of blind devotion, but out of a desire to rebuild trust and respect. At last, with nowhere left to turn, Vanessa agreed to a settlement that required her to cease any further public statements, destroy all incriminating material, and avoid contact with Alexander and Evelyn. In exchange, the Knights agreed not to pursue criminal charges, but made no substantial financial payout. Essentially, Vanessa left town in disgrace, her reputation in tatters. In the aftermath, Knight Mansion felt lighter, as though a lingering shadow had finally lifted. Late one evening, Evelyn found herself alone in the mansion's grand ballroom, a place that once intimidated her with its opulence. Gazing at her reflection in the gilded mirrors, she realized she no longer felt like an outsider or an imposter. She had fought for her place. She had defended her dignity, saved her marriage from the brink, and discovered a quiet strength she never knew she possessed. Alexander entered the ballroom, walking tentatively toward her. In his eyes, she saw gratitude, hope, and remorse. He offered a hand, and she took it cautious, yet open to the possibility that love could blossom anew, this time forged by honesty and mutual respect. No, Evelyn Whittaker Knight wasn't the same wide-eyed Cinderella who'd once stepped into a world of wealth and intrigue. She was a survivor, a fighter, and perhaps, at last, a true partner to the man who had once been her prince, but was now simply the man she was learning to love, with all his flaws and virtues. As the dust settled, Evelyn Whittaker Knight realized every fairy tale is tested by trials. For her, the princess gown was replaced by a warrior's armor, and the glass slipper by a steel resolve. Yet, through heartbreak and betrayal, she fought for her dignity and found a deeper sense of self. The union she once believed was hopeless gained new life, strengthened by truth, honesty, and a willingness to mend. Cinderella, finally, had met her prince not in a dreamy ballroom, but in the tempest of real-life conflict. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of love, scandal, and self-discovery. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel for more dramatic tales that blend romance, intrigue, and the triumph of the human spirit. Your support fuels our storytelling, and we can't wait to share the next adventure with you.